Good afternoon. My name is Christine Binger. This is my EDL 856 Module 5 video about understanding my community. I am currently working in Kansas City Public Schools East High School, which is a high-need, very low-income community. Every student is considered low socioeconomic status, so we have 100% free and reduced lunch. We have high issues with gang violence, drugs, weapons, murder, things like that are happening quite regularly in our community. There's a lot of issues around money. If you're perceived to have money, then people have issues with you. Race, some people have issues with you. Who you're affiliated with, people have issues with you. And this is coming from a very diverse community with 70 plus nationalities and 50 or like 42, between 42 and 50 languages spoken. We have new people attending our school first time in America every single day. So we have a lot that we're dealing with in our community. Some of the customs and traditions, we're kind of split between families wanting more for their children, opportunities to go to college or get degrees in some sense, whereas the other half are anti-college because they think that people who have attended college are better than them, so they don't want their kids to grow up thinking that they're better than them, which is unfortunate that that mentality is there because a child has to push through that if they really want it. They are a very hardworking community, though. They are trying to provide everything they can for their kids, and they rely on the support of family members. So lots of generations will live in one household so that they can watch siblings and work and provide all together. Lifestyles, we kind of have a lot of uninvolved parents simply because of needs outside of education. So they oftentimes think their kid comes to school, so everything's taken care of, so I don't have to worry about them. And in reality, there are still worries to be had when we see students in school. As far as race, religion, politics, social class, nobody really discusses these. They just kind of make assumptions and then act accordingly based on what their beliefs are, which tends to cause a lot of problems within our community. The educational level, majority of families have not attended college or training. And immigration, we have a lot of immigrants that have come here, so they're working whatever jobs they can get and being providing as much as they can. I teach in the high school, so grades 9 through 12. Our population, though, while in your average school, kids are graduating at roughly 18, because of the immigration population and how English is not their primary language and oftentimes not even spoken until they arrive to our school. We have a lot of students that are higher than 18, but at 21 legally they cannot come back to school, so we have to do as much as we can to help them get their degree and be prepared by the time they leave. So that happens quite often. It's male-female population. We don't have a high LGBTQ community or trans or the they pronoun. They're a working class community. They do work very hard and very, very diverse. Known communication channels. The district uses email, telephone the most in regards to teacher communication with families. The district itself uses texting services, so you can sign your phone up to receive text messages about conferences, snow days, board meetings, things like that. If you don't use that, then you need to use the school website to find information. And then we hope to get information across through scheduled meetings, such as IEP meetings and parent-teacher conferences. The local news provides minimal positive reports. Oftentimes when they're reporting something on the district, it's usually negative, which is unfortunate. Our district is very large. It covers a very large area. So much is happening all the time that it seems that only the negative things pop up, which is unfortunate. The foreign language impact, if you do not speak English, you have to search for ways to get the information. The district provides language services, which you can sign up for, but again, you would have to know to do that, to have that. So it's really hard to communicate that with parents sometimes. So most of their news information comes from social media, which isn't always reliable because they are hearing things secondhand sometimes. And then the television, so anything that they can get from the local news. Community groups, they're not well known. We want to utilize community groups, but they're never advertised and they're actually very hard to find. The school advisory committee would be kind of like a PTA group. Anybody can join and you work with your administration at your school to develop policies, make decisions, understand what's taking place, try to get community involvement. And then we utilize communities in schools, which is paid for by a grant that my school has. They provide needs for students outside of school, so clothing, food, therapy, housing, different things like that to help them beyond the boundaries of the school. Known leadership, we have our elected officials, Quentin Lucas and Mike Parson, who represent Missouri. And then within our school, we have the school board, which is technically elected officials, but they represent solely the school, and then the superintendent and administration. And from there, we go down to families, students, teachers, and the community as a whole, or who is impacted by the decisions and what takes place at the top. Community leaders' characteristics. Elected officials are obviously elected by the community. Unfortunately, our community is not high in voting, so we have a hard time getting the ideas across of what we feel needs to be done within our schools and electing accordingly. Additionally, a lot of teachers don't live in the community that they're voting in. For example, I don't. So even if I wanted to, I can't vote in that community. So I have to try to get the word out, which is very hard. As far as educational leaders, oftentimes the district likes to promote within, which can be great because they know the policies and essentially have, quote, proven themselves, but sometimes sucks because oftentimes people get set in their ways and it makes it difficult to learn and grow and develop sometimes. To access our leadership team, email would be done for district personnel or elected officials. When it comes to administration, text message is the best way to get a hold of them. They're oftentimes not in their offices and they're difficult to reach. So if you text them and tell them you need something, they can show up to you wherever you are and discuss it or provide it, whatever the case may be. Connections to outside resources. Our only connection would be the communities and schools provider, but our grant is ending next year, so I'm curious what they will do when that ends. The leaders have the power to make change, but all ideas have to be filtered upwards. So they go, if I want to suggest something, it would go to my administration, which would then go to the board. Then the board would send it back down through all the channels. So sometimes it takes a long time to get something to happen. And oftentimes it takes a long time to hear that you've done paperwork wrong. You have to do it again. Known economic conditions. Like I said, we're a low income community. We have very high taxes and not a stable working community. So people can have something going for them, they're working, and then suddenly they're fired for various reasons, which is unfortunate. We have many vacant houses, which also plays into the lack of taxes to pay for things. With roughly 15,000 vacant homes in our city alone, it is really hard to assess the needs because the population isn't utilized correctly because of those vacant houses become other things. The district office, we're not fairly funded because of these things. We have 100% low socioeconomic status. And we have to search for grants to support the needs of our extremely low income area, which is really hard to do because it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And oftentimes the grants become very controlling of what you can do with it. So you have to be very specific about what you're picking to provide for your community. The political structure, we cannot separate politics from education. It was agreed a long time ago, obviously, that public education would be free, and people take that statement to me to be literal, and it's not. Things still cost money, which is why we have taxes. So we need to find ways to provide more opportunities within those tax rights and see how we can help students. So no, it can never be, they need to go together, politics and education. Additionally, we need to be careful about who we are hiring to make these decisions for us. Having uneducated people or people who have not truly experienced what it's like to be in education are a detriment to furthering education and providing the best. Additionally, the idea of the back in my day mentality, education needs to be evolving as fast as our society is, and my district is not doing that. Some districts are, and they're really thriving, but we need to look at how we can improve for what's to come, not what is currently taking place. We also have the union that's taking place. However, it's not very effective in our district. I think a lot of these problems are because our district is so large. If they were to cut it in half and make it 2 districts, then I think that there would be more change, more opportunities to improve the needs of the students. Some social tensions. Like I said, I work in a very unique environment. We do have interracial confrontation in that kids respect each other, but are very set in what they believe about interracial relationships and interactions, which makes sometimes your classroom structure very interesting. Yes, we do have gangs. However, they oftentimes don't cause problems within the school, but they are definitely causing problems outside of the school, which the school then has to deal with inside. So it's definitely a balance between those two sides, and we communicate with the police department quite often and are informed of things that happened overnight before the next school day even starts, so we know what to prepare for. There are cliques, but not in a way that one group is judging another. It's more, I would consider it friend groups who hang out together, and those friend groups become tighter as the years go by. So I don't see it a lot at the freshman level, but you will see it more at the senior level. There is discrimination, but it's similar to interracial. It's more internal opinions about things, and it's not acted on violently or verbally or anything like that. The causes are due to misunderstanding. A lot of times our Muslim community is misunderstood by our Hispanic community, and so it's a lot of lack of knowledge, and so we have to learn to analyze those cultural differences, and that's our job as teachers, is to find ways to integrate all sorts of different cultures so that hopefully some of these issues can be resolved or better understood and minimized as a result. Extra sources of information. For school records, you can contact the registrar, but there's a lot of paperwork involved. You have to be very specific about what you're looking for. Students are provided questionnaires periodically throughout the year through the Google community. Any directory information can be found online. The school does not actively provide that. And the minutes from school board meetings and staff inventory, those are also found online, but again, not publicly advertised. So you would have to know where to go to get it. The power structure. Like I said, it's a top to bottom approach where everything has to be filtered upward and then back downward. So oftentimes those of us at the bottom, like teachers, feel like we are not being heard or we don't actually have chances to provide change. It takes a long time to get some of that done. We would still need to be interacting with everybody, and so building these strong relationships within the school as well as within the community can really help that. Additionally, families who speak up and support teachers or support something that may have happened or may not have happened actually tend to make a faster change than teachers do. I think the board, especially in our community, wants to fix the bad so fast that when parents speak up about something, they're definitely heard. Multicultural issues. Leaders push for community engagement and differentiated work. My school is a PBL school, so they definitely push for community involvement and understanding differences through student-driven projects that center around our standards. Doing this can be great, but it is really hard for the teacher to find community members or groups who can support because they're not advertised. They also oftentimes are very skeptical about coming into schools because they don't know what they're working with. Finding ways to integrate it more as an administrator would be great. Meet and greets and things of that nature would be very helpful to create these relationships. My school definitely respects culture. Like I said, there are so many nationalities and religions that are prominent in our school. So we definitely allow students and promote practicing your religions. For example, Ramadan in the springtime, we have special prayer rooms set up for students. We're well aware that they are fasting, so sometimes they get altered testing schedules to be moved to the beginning of the day when they're most nourished from the nighttime, things like that. In regards to the dress code, like I said, we respect the Muslim students wearing their hijabs, our African students wearing their full dress, including headdresses, but unfortunately there are no boundaries that we can push in regards to wave caps and things of that nature that differentiate some of our gang activity. Our power structure with political parties, we don't discuss these things. They're kept private, though I think if you worked in our school, you would have to have a specific belief. We have rewards for attendance and test scores, including meals and pizza parties and things like that. We also work really hard to reduce the dropout rate, so we need to find ways to help these students so that we aren't constantly sending students out because our district doesn't want us to look like we have a low or a high dropout rate. Our public opinion, how do people feel about the school system? Either they don't know or they think it's unfair. Both of these are valid to some sense, but we need to find ways to make it accessible and provide it in multiple languages to meet the needs of all of our students and publicize the information from our culture so people know what's happening within schools. And public opinion surveys, questionnaires are utilized for teachers and students, and then interviews are held when you enter and exit schools. So thank you for listening. I hope you have a good evening.